Pressler, would you lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
Yes. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Any of the commissioners have declarations of conflict or any conflicts to declare?
Nope.
None.
Okay, I have a couple. I own a nightly rental in town, and I also have a conditional use on my property. So, okay, the agenda. Have you all looked at that? And can I get a motion for approval?
I make a motion that we approve the order of the agenda.
I second.
I got a motion and a second. Take a vote, and we will start. I don't remember where we started. Wayne, we'll start voting with you tonight. So we approved the agenda, and it was first and second, and now we're taking a vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Review of the minutes. Did you all get a chance to look at the minutes? Any issues with that at all? Yeah, it was pretty short because there wasn't a lot last
really short.
meeting. So,
Yep.
Okay, well, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from last meeting, whatever date
August
that
9th.
was. August 9th.
August
Thank you.
9th, yeah.
I second the motion.
Got a motion and a second. Take a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain because I wasn't here.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Public forum. This is an opportunity for the public to speak on anything that's not on the agenda tonight. So I'll open that up for the public forum. If you step up, please state your name and address. No takers. Okay, I will close the public forum then. Oh,
The part about the RV park is out tonight? Is that on the agenda tonight?
yes.
Okay.
At the end.
Yeah, I didn't know if we were. Okay, public forum is now closed. Reports. The only thing that I have anything on to mention is that we will be looking for an alternate here shortly in November. So if you know of anybody who would like to be an alternate on the planning commission, yeah, I'd love to have them reach out and just discuss it. So we can kind of forward it to the mayor so he can make a decision on that. Any other commissioners have anything to report? Planning and zoning administrator. Have you got anything to report? Okay, Riker,
Nothing outside of the agenda items.
Afton?
I actually have just a couple of things that we wanted to report on. These were reported in city council, and just a couple of things that we're working on Monday. The timeline will have passed for anybody to write in for the election. And so we are going to be asking that we can cancel the general election. So as long as nobody writes in on Monday, then that would solidify the candidates that are currently up would be recognized formally. So that will be coming on Monday. If nobody writes in, obviously. A couple of things we wanted to just report on from the actual league. I went to the city manager meeting there. They talked about a couple of bills that are going to be presented at the legislature in this upcoming session are going to have a lot to do with zone changes and things that they're looking at. They talked about one of the things that will be up for discussion would be whether general plans will be regulatory or guiding documents. That's been a big issue, not just in our city, but apparently in a lot of cities. So that's one that's up for looking at for the legislature. The other thing that they're looking at is making the zone change process administrative rather than going before planning commission or city councils. So that is a major one that they're discussing at the state legislature. So that's just important to know. And so Yeah, so that was a couple of things that we wanted to just let everybody know. The bypass road is obviously still ongoing. They paved the center section, kind of the north end of there, and their JP excavation is still, digging, blasting. They're working on the parkway. That is looking to be done the first quarter of next year. A couple of things that we wanted to just update on kind of the financial report for the city. And like I said, this is just the same one that we give at council, but I know different people watch planning commission or attend than they do council. So a couple of things just as far as city business is that our annual audit we had our pre-audit assessment from Keddington and Christensen. We did really well on that. We received a lot of positive feedback for having completed all of the items from last year. Those items included separation of duties, fraud risk assessments, establishing procedures for the disposal of capital assets. I'm sure you've seen those on Facebook. We've done auctions of property that we're not using, backhoes and dump trucks and things like that. We've increased our IT cybersecurity, and then that final city audit happens in October, and then those findings are presented after that. So we wanted to just do an update of the budget where at this point in time, 25% of the year has elapsed. We've only spent 19.27% of the budget. So we're right on track with that. We are working on some additional grants. Tokerville, we received, we put in for a FEMA brick grant to do a study so that we could clean out Ash Creek and Laverkin Creek. There's been a lot of debris in there and we've been asked to look at that. So we received a grant for $38,000 to do that study. So engineering firms will complete that study. And then after that, that's when we can apply to have the ACE crews that come in and actually do the cleaning out of that. So it's not our public works. They actually bring in crews to clean out those waterways. And so, so we're looking forward to that. Hopefully by the summer, we'll have people in there cleaning out Ash Creek. That's part of it is an erosion hazard study. And then we've also applied for a grant for the water tank that would be going out west. We applied for a grant for that. That was about a $4.5 million grant that we applied for through the governor's office. We received feedback just saying that it's the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity and Development. We received really positive feedback from that. We'll find out in December if we were successful in that. That would be huge to have another water tank. And then, we're also applying for 3 different rural infrastructure grants. We had them out today. We had Darren Prince and Colette Cox. They came to Tokerville today and we took them on an infrastructure tour so that we could just go around and see what other grants we could apply for because we are rural to kind of offset that. The whole goal is to offset some of these expensive projects with grant funding, keeping property tax low and not raising water rates. And so that's the whole goal. We're looking at a 3 to 5 year plan with Rocky Mountain Power, trying to get the power lines on Toker Boulevard taken underground. That is a major undertaking. The funding alone is probably going to take 3 years to secure. And then that project, major undertaking. And part of that is we have to have this road transferred, the bypass road open, this Toker Boulevard transferred back to Tokerville, and then we can really move forward with that. But I think that would be huge to have those power lines underground and just really make it look really pretty downtown. So that's something that I'm currently working on, applying for those grants. For the community report, and I'll just kind of speed this up, the community report for Westfield Park, that fencing has been put up. We brought in the fill dirt we've had the fill dirt delivered. We've got to raise that a little bit. So the fencing has gone up. Public Works put that up there. You can still access the playground. The shade structure has come in for the smaller one. We have 2 playgrounds, a larger one and then the toddler playground. And the larger one already has its shade structure, but that toddler playground shade structure is here. So that will be going up. You'll see that going up. The construction fencing, we are planning on sloping that park and just installing grass. It will have a pavilion in the middle, and then pickleball courts will be on the south side of that. We're going to phase in those pickleball courts. We had to go back to engineering for some of those. Darren and I had a meeting this morning with Bowen Collins on the landscape design. So that is definitely moving forward. We've got the restroom designs, the final changes on that. So that park should definitely be the restrooms and things under construction by end of October. I mean, I can't imagine it being longer than that.
Yeah.
in Trail Ridge Estates, that Frisbee golf course, we worked with Tracy Munson's son, who was an Eagle Scout for his Eagle Scout project. Those pads have been poured, the signs have been installed, so that is now open. You can play Frisbee golf down there with the actual pads and the signs. So that was a really great project. And then we already addressed Tokerville Parkway. One thing I did want to just mention with that is we've heard concerns that we are addressing. Those concerns mainly are dust, rocks on the roadway, and traffic speeds near Trail Ridge Estates and Choya. So we've been bringing those up in the weekly coordination meeting. They've been excellent to work with. They've been doing a great job there. We know there are lots of big trucks around town and things like that. So. But that is just an ongoing construction project. We completed the paving and filling of potholes at Anderson Junction. So we went up there. Sunrock went ahead and overlaid some of that pavement. And then one other thing we wanted to just make the public aware of is that there was a kind of a combination of Hurricane and Laverton, the county. We went to a meeting, Tokerville was there, but we went to a meeting in Hurricane City about Tokerville Falls. And out of that meeting, there was a grant that was applied for by Greater Zion, and then it's called DRATS, but it's their ATV club. And they applied for the OHV grant through the state. And we're hearing that they were successful in that. I have not verified that, but we're hearing that they were successful in that grant. That grant was $660,000, and the county would contribute to that. And that grant money is supposed to be used to improve the road, both to the communication towers and to Tokerville Falls. In this meeting, the BLM was there as well. They reported that 78,000 people have visited Tokerville Falls in 2022. They obviously don't have 2023 data, but in 2022, they estimated that 78,000 people visited Tokerville Falls. 28,000 vehicles went up that road. And in addition to that, now that they want to try to widen that road and do some improvements up there, Tokerville City was concerned about that. Obviously, Springs Drive is a major concern for us. They're exploring some alternate routes, and we were very concerned about getting more and more traffic with no offset for property taxes. We did not contribute to that from our budget or anything like that, and we did not issue a letter of support. That was at the direction of council, but it's just something that obviously affects the whole city. So we will verify if they were successful. They've said that they were. So anyway, that's just kind of in the preliminary stages. The second discussion on that is that phase 2 would be a possible staging area, and working with Tokerville to see about how that would work or who would manage it. That's very preliminary. The first step is that they applied for that to improve the road to the comm towers, keep that open and going for public safety, and then the road to the falls. They also reported that it was very interesting that Tokerville Falls is now the third reason why people visit Washington County, which was interesting. And probably some of that had to do with the fact that Iron Man, when they publicized Iron Man, Tokerville Falls was at the beginning and the ending of all of their promotional videos. So we were very highly publicized. So that's just something that's interesting that I thought we'd pass on. And then the other thing I wanted to give an update on is council is currently reviewing who our code enforcement. We're submitting some names to them, and they are going to review those. So we should be announcing and then swearing in and then announcing our code enforcement at our next city council meeting next week. So we want to just give you an update that that's going. We have signed an interlocal agreement allowing Tokerville to use the justice courts. So we're criminalizing that code and doing that. So even though it's been a very long process, we are definitely moving forward on that. We chose at the suggestion of the city attorney and at the county, Eric Clark, the county, we chose like our top about 5 or 6 ordinances that we're really having complaints on. Those are things like vicious dogs was number 1, lighting, addressing illegal nightly rentals. We had the nuisance ordinance, which includes, all of the things of that. But we had the nuisance ordinance, including drugs. And so those are just some of the major ones that we started with. We went through the complaints that we've received and tried to address those. And so that's just an update on that. As far as economic growth, you're going to see the general plan is up for discussion tonight. We have received what they consider the final draft of that. That was sent out to the mayor, city council, and all of planning commission, including the alternates. We would like your feedback within, the next couple of days on that, if you have any. We're not going to go through it page by page today. It's on the agenda just simply so that we can give you just a reminder that we do need your feedback, because we've got to get that back to Sunrise Engineering so that then they can put that into final draft format so that we can have that for a public hearing in October. But that will be made available to the public October 1st. So that's just something we wanted to give it. We gave this update at council. We've been working with Civic Plus, which is the web designer for our website. We're giving them the final content on there. So that is scheduled to go live. And by the end of the month, we should have that website up and running. And it is so streamlined and easy to use. As far as the League of Cities and Towns, the topics that were there, I mentioned, were affordable housing. They would like us to stop using the term affordable housing or multifamily. They would like us to start using the term missing middle housing. They feel like that's more appropriate, that it's actually that they're finding that there's housing for low income, and they're finding that there's very high income housing, but they're finding that housing for just middle people who say, I want my kids to live here and that. So they're really pushing to start calling this missing middle housing. I still slip and call it multifamily. But anyway, that was one thing that they had a presentation about. Land use was a very hot topic. General plans I told you about, they're discussing that. Infrastructure programs. One of the main things that I thought was very interesting coming out of the league was in almost every single session, they were talking about parking. Parking is a major hot topic, and they're talking about shortening the actual length of driveways for parking, but also requiring fewer parking stalls. And the logic behind that is what they're thinking is that that extra land could be used for housing. And I would say, just taking that one step further, just based on some of the other presentations, my own interpretation of that, this was not anything presented, but my own interpretation was there was also a lot of electric vehicle presentation, there, which would make sense. If you're shortening driveways, people aren't going to drive big, huge trucks, right, that stick out in there. So there were some things about that I really kind of wondered, as that comes before you, of shrinking parking for different things, just keeping in mind that it limits the ability for people to drive big trucks or things that we actually use in Tokerville and that we like having. And so just some things that, even though a lot of these things are being pushed at the state level, I just think it's important for Planning Commission and Council to keep in mind how some of those, I don't have a problem with electric vehicles, but just kind of thinking through what that actually does, right? To start, if people are having, especially because we're putting before, up for decisions, things like on-street parking, right? And limiting that. We talked about in council, limiting on-street parking from 96 hours to 48 hours. If you have a big truck and it can't fit in your driveway, where does it really go? So just that was very interesting. You're going to see a big push for Planning Commission and Council to consider reducing parking at the state's request. And then the governor's initiative is called Guiding Our Growth. That is from the Office of Planning and Budget. They did a survey statewide. They had 29,000 responses, and they were it was all about growth and how they wanted to do it. The preliminary numbers that they had were that 60% of people wanted some growth that included mixed density and accessory dwelling units, and 19% of people that responded to the survey wanted zero growth. And then that other chunk, they wanted growth, but they didn't want it in their backyard. So that was how that went. And then one other thing, very last thing, this is just an update that we're just doing repeatedly, very simply, is just reminding people that you can apply for permits online now through Civic Review, both for nightly rental. That moratorium is over. We have a couple of spots left. So if that's something that people have been wondering about, you can actually call the city office, and we will actually measure, like as you want, we will do the measuring to say, like, hey, you've got one within 300 feet of your property. Still put in your application if you'd like, but we can see. So there's that. Home occupations, obviously, conditional use permits, things like that. You can do all those things online. And so that was just kind of an update. We give that at City Council, and we just like to give it at Planning Commission since it's once a month and different people
Awesome. Very
So
good
yeah,
information.
sorry,
Thank
that
you.
was a long report.
I do have one more question for you though.
Mhm.
Have you got any update on the reservoir or where that's at or?
Yeah, water
what
in
they've-
2026.
2026?
I went to the meeting at the water district where we talked about that. I met with Corey Cram for just a few minutes after, just talked to him about the process. They've cleared the Division of Dam Safety, so that's going. It's been out to bid, but that project, just with construction and timeline and reviews, they think there will be water in that reservoir in 2026. So the walking path around it is currently on hold just for cost, but costs are coming down. The other thing we've been talking to them a lot about is even if there was to be a walking path around that, that reservoir is intended to be fenced off. And the current design for the fence is chain link, like would be around a normal culinary
Yeah.
reservoir.
Yeah.
And so we've been working hard on that to try to find some solutions. The water district doesn't want to see it fenced with that either, but currently that is what is in the design. And so, yeah, working through that, but we've got some time on that too. So, but 2026 is when they anticipate water in their construction from now till then. But
And
Yeah.
just so you know too, really quick, if you don't mind. Basically, tomorrow I'm meeting with Trinity Stout to go over the grading plans for that initial keyway and things such as that. So they're keeping us in the loop with what's the plans there. They don't quite have the plans for some of it, but what they're putting out for bid, they are definitely coming in and getting permitting. They're asking us how Tokerville does permit process for that. And so we're working with them on the permits as well.
Just a curiosity, all the rock that we're blowing up off the bypass coming through, where is that going?
they're actually using quite a bit of it on the project.
Curious because it seemed like it would be awesome if they were shipping it over to do the dam as well, possibly. But
Yeah.
we're
No,
a little
it's
bit-
all staying on site. It's all staying
Yeah,
right. They're
The materials for the geotechnical reports are different for a dam
Yeah.
there,
Okay.
as Wayne might know. Wayne, just it's not the material they need.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody have any questions on any of that? That was pretty.
No, I really just want to say that I appreciate
Yeah, I
you
do
giving
too.
us those reports the last few
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Because
Thank you.
we get asked things all the time and we don't know, so it's nice to be kept in the loop a little bit.
you know, and
Thank you.
people know. So yeah.
Okay, that will take us to discussion items. F1, discussion on ordinance 2023 R110 district and the creation of an R110 zone within the R110 zone or R1 zoning district. Riker, have you got something for us on that?
Yeah, so a request was made that the planning commission consider a higher density, single-family residential zone. A draft of that, a very tentative draft, has been provided in your packets that includes an R110 zone as a standalone and also the option of putting all of those residential zones into a table. And that table came as a suggestion from Attorney Snow. But this is before you because staff is seeking direction on whether the planning commission would like an ordinance for this zone drafted to establish it.
Okay. Any questions on that?
No.
No?
I don't want it. General plan, the current, the future, and the interim, all is asking for larger lots. I have all the backup if you want to hear. I'm not one that wants to go against that general plan very far, very far as that. I just, if 120 people went and took the survey, which they said they did, and that's the results we got, and the new general plan is only going off 25 suggestions for the scenarios. But I can read these all off to you. The size of the lot in Tokerville is really important. And this is the current general plan. And parks and open spaces are really important. And the smaller lots are really, really discouraged at 17%. And in the general plan, it kind of tries to hold us to the quarter acre or larger. But in our current general plan, it is half acres or larger.
Wayne, will you put your microphone down, just?
Hello.
There you go. Thanks.
How do I talk loud enough because I can't hear anyway?
Thanks.
So that's my opinion on it. I'm not one to keep creating ordinances and ordinances and ordinances. When it's working, we want the small town feel, we want the rural feel we have. This will tend to destroy it in my opinion.
Do we have a current application for this, or was this just something somebody asked for?
No, we just get, so we hold a meeting, and just for the public so that they kind of know, we hold, if anybody wants to develop something in Tokerville, we've kind of talked about this before, we have a meeting that's in place and it's called PSR. And it's just planning staff review. And it just gives people an opportunity, whether they want to build a fence or if they want to do a big development or anything, it gives them an opportunity to come in and talk with staff. And we see lots of times these people are asking for these, right? And then we see things come through that we hear about, like we were just talking about at the league, right? That address smaller lot sizes or affordable housing or multifamily or the missing middle or things like that. And so we're asked lots of times to say, hey, is this something that Tokerville would like to consider? And so that's why you're seeing it here as a discussion to say, hey, so staff it was one thing to come in and talk to staff, but we are the land use authority for the city and we don't make recommendations to city council in the same way that you do. So it's just before you as a discussion. If it's something that you discuss and you feel like, yeah, we want to give staff direction to put this on the agenda and come back formally and we'll make a recommendation, fine. If it's something that you feel like it's not something that you want to explore, we just need direction either way. Once these questions get asked to staff, we have an obligation to pass those on.
Yeah.
So that's why this is here.
So we had this about, I don't know, maybe a year ago, if you remember that. And our decision back then was that we didn't have a current applicant. And so we just decided to just let it go. I kind of feel like that same tonight to me. So yeah, go ahead.
I would just like to express that I support it, and I would love to see smaller lots, because I think in some ways we have to choose between having open space plus density versus a large number of very large lots. Then we have a lot of sprawl in the properties. Another reason that I'm supportive of this is that we have a very serious missing middle crisis in our county right now. Housing, the median house price is up around $500,000. And I have children. And I'd like them to be able to live here. And I don't want them to have to move away and move back when they're at retirement age and have finally been able to build up enough wealth to purchase a home on a large lot. So I'm supportive of it. And I appreciate that we have all the viewpoints represented. I just want to make sure that one is shared.
That's why we have 5 people here.
So I'm for smaller lots. I realize it goes against the general plan, so to speak, but so does all the development going to the west. Nobody, the people who took the survey, they don't want to see growth. They don't want to see any of that. But the reality is, like Jenny said, we've got to do something to bring down costs. And I think that would certainly go in the right direction for it. There's got to be a balance of following what the people want, but yet also doing what is right for everybody that lives here. And like you say, children that want to live here. I mean, I personally don't have any kids that are going to be moving to Tokerville, so I don't have a dog, in this fight. But I do think it's just a responsible thing to do what we can. And I think there's more things that we can do even besides this, but that's for a different time. But I'm for smaller lots.
I don't know if the trade-off's worth it, guys, especially in your old town, because the information we're having is everybody wants it left alone like it is. And there's really not a whole lot of room in Old Town to start splitting whatever's left into tiny lots. Because you go R 10,000 and then somebody's going to want R 8,000. And then where do we go from there? If you don't stand your ground and fight for what you all wanted, the majority wanted, then I think we go backwards.
I think one of the things that Wayne said, and this is, I agree with you, Jenny. I do think that there is a need for that kind of thing. And I think that is a possibility that we need to be looking at. What I don't like to do is start changing code just because to change code for something that we don't have. So for me, it would be, let's have an application that says this is what we want. And then we start to figure out where, then we get an idea of where it's at, what we're looking at, and all those kind of things, as opposed to just creating a code for something that might be coming.
It sounds like they already are approaching the city, but they're getting pushed away because this doesn't exist. So that argument to me, I don't know that it holds water for me, because they're not going to apply unless we have this on the books. Because they will go to that meeting, get told that we don't have it, and not apply.
Is that
Do you
true?
guys
We
have
never
input on that?
discourage anyone who approaches the city from putting in an application. We
Okay.
always tell them you are more than welcome to put in an application, regardless of if we have the zoning. If we don't have the zoning, we always encourage the applicant, if they would like to apply, they can apply. What we often end up seeing is we do have an open discussion about what our zoning is, right? We look at zoning maps with them and things. But what we often see is that instead, what's happening is people who have over 100 acres then come in and are approaching things saying that they would rather just have the FBO, right? Which allows them to have apartments or other things like that to get higher density. So we do have, and that's a separate issue, but so we do have situations, like, for example, the building to the west, like Stacy said, where these things are going to be considerably more dense than 10,000 square foot
It's definitely going to
lots,
come.
right? So,
Right.
Yes.
It's coming.
yeah, so there are going to be areas of this city that are going to have very, density. The issue that I see on some of their areas, obviously in Firelight would be one example. They do have a single family proposed in different areas. They're not building those currently, right? Some of their smaller lot sizes and things are actually going to be active adult communities. And so that's not going to do much for kids that are going to try to move back or things. So yes, there are some areas of the city where we do have master plan development, these overlay zones that already do allow for smaller lot sizes. But like Wayne said, they won't be downtown, right? They'll be out west where people would maybe have to live. But yeah, so this is why it's just before you for discussion. We hear lots of different things where people say, yes, we want to do it, and no. There's also a lot of talk. Darren and I have both been to, it's a Southern Utah, and Ryder's been to this now as well. There is a group that meets at Washington City, and it's called the Southern Utah Land Task Force. And it has Southern Utah Home Builders is a part of that. They have different city officials representing, everybody from Ivins to Hurricane here, all throughout Washington City's there, City of St. George, a couple of their attorneys. And the whole point of that is that these builders are pushing for smaller lot sizes, right, and higher density nonstop. And they are actually trying to come up with ways to approach the state to have these things be mandated. And so we're obviously there in the room trying to say zoning in that way, it just doesn't work. We can't have the legislature decide what zoning in Toberville should look like. So the discussions at that meeting sound a lot like, well, then what are you doing in your city to demonstrate that you are addressing this housing crisis? And so some of those things that we can do is say, you know what, we have put it before planning commission. This is what we've done to try and address these different things. It's really just a discussion at this point, but I do think it's important to note that there are people, even within our county, that are pushing for all of these cities to address this so that it doesn't become mandated by the state of what your zoning is. I think it's obvious that they're also trying to, even just by the nature of trying to take zone changes administratively, I think the state is being very heavy-handed by trying to control what the general plan looks like, if it's finding a regulatory, what your zoning is and what your lot sizes are, right down to how much parking you can have, the length of a driveway. That's pretty heavy-handed in my opinion, and far of overreach that takes away a lot of the land use authority of the city and planning commission. So I think there's reasons to look at it. We don't have an application for it, so if this is as far as it goes and you say wait until we do have an application, I mean, it's whatever direction you want to give. But I do think it's important to know there is a lot of pressure from the state to either do this or they would like to step in and do it. That's what's being discussed at the state level. So,
You know, I look at it, if somebody has a lot, even in the older part of town, and they can split that, so whoever can live there, build a home, and it'd be less expensive for to do it. And if that's what they want to do, their property rights, I think, why is the city stopping them? Because their neighbor doesn't want 2 houses on that lot. It makes no sense to me.
Well, I think the neighbor has rights too.
That's right.
But we basically have, no outburst, please. We basically have small zoning. But we got a whole bunch of it out here. And I guarantee you, if somebody splits their lot here in Older Tocqueville and sells it, it's gonna be way more expensive than a 10,000 square foot lot out there. And I don't know if the developers are gonna give a break to anybody because they're gonna get the high dollar for it. So everywhere the development's happening right now in their smaller lots, they're outrageously priced. So I want a place for my kids to come to, but they can't come here. Tocqueville, Older Tocqueville has no room or expanding out here where we already got basically that zoning for the smaller houses. And hopefully that's where they were going to be attained more affordable housing out there. But that's at the will of the developer, which he's going to choose the money over attainable housing.
But here in town, it's not going to be a developer that's doing it. It's going to be a homeowner that wants their son, daughter, cousin, mother-in-law, whoever living in the backyard. And again, why are we trying to prevent that? It's just my opinion. I think we should make some
If you
make
look
smaller
around the
lots.
town, most of your lots can't accommodate to be split because they can't have the frontage. If you can. even find
Then that
one.
resolves that right there. But there are some
But we
that
don't,
can.
I don't think we need to make an ordinance just to make an ordinance when we already have smaller lots on the docket. That's just what I'm thinking. I mean, yeah, I would love to have my kids move here, but it's too unattainable. And it's always going to be unattainable because the lucky few are in this historic town is it's just the way it is.
As we grow, we're definitely going to see smaller lots. We already know they've got them.
It's going to happen.
When the Lowe's decide to develop their property, I'm sure those will bring in some smaller lots as well. So it's not an if, it's a when, because it's already happening. I don't know that we need to create an ordinance now to do that because I think it's coming. And it's kind of a balancing act, no doubt. We have to look at the general plan and even the new one talks about open spaces and these types of things, primarily in Old Town Tocqueville, in the areas that are developed now. It's asking for all the other development to create the middle income and missing housing and the apartments and things like that out west of the Old Town. So it is coming. It would be moved out there. I don't know if we need to say we need to change these to half acre or quarter acre lots here. And there are some properties in town that certainly could be bought up by developers that would change them into quarter acre lots in the middle of town. And but we don't have any application for that. So I don't understand when the application comes through, we look at it, we say, yep, that works. And either we do or we don't. That's how it feels to me. I don't know that we need to act now.
I agree.
Do we have any consensus on that? Do we want to move forward or where do we want to go with this?
Well, it's just a discussion, so we.
It
don't
is a
have to-
discussion.
we don't have to really do anything.
What we would do is we would either just say, hey, we'll let it go for tonight, or we would give Riker some
Okay. Okay.
feedback on what we would
So
like
you're
him to
looking
do.
for a motion.
Not really motion because it's a discussion, but I just want to make sure everybody feels decent with that decision. It doesn't mean that it can't come in. People who can put an application would come back to us and we would decide then what we're going to do with it.
See, and I feel like if doing it that way, now we're just being reactionary on everything instead of being proactive on it.
For me,
I mean,
for me, it's like saying, hey, do we want to welcome it into our old town where we know the general plan, new one says kind of growth out that way. The old one says no. So to me, it's like, I don't really see, I see a downside to saying, oh yeah, come on in and developers build, 1/4 acre lots right here in the middle of town now, because that's what they could do. There are some free lots out there that they could do that. Let them ask for it. If they ask for it, then we can look at it then and make that decision. That's kind of how I feel about it. Unfortunately, I know he does. I know you do. We appreciate that. Okay, do I move on?
Sure.
I say we move
So
on.
the direction is just to not see this as a
Direction is
discussion
to
and
not-
action item,
yeah.
see this-
Yeah. Okay, we will move on to discussion item 2, discussion on Tokerville City General Plan.
So,
Riker?
yeah, just to kind of echo what Afton reported on earlier, you guys should have received a copy of the final draft of the general plan. And we would encourage you to go through that and look through that and then provide comments back to me so that I can coordinate with Sunrise to incorporate those as we get those. And then some things to consider there specifically are you'll notice that there's different sections and different parts of the general plan address different areas. Those include land use, recreation, transportation, among others. Just pay attention to those areas, pay attention to those goals and go through those and let us know what feedback you have.
You're not looking for feedback currently then?
We are.
Yes.
We are,
Yes.
they were emailed to you.
Not tonight in this meeting, but
Not this evening.
No, not this evening.
Yeah, this is just an
Good,
announcement, just to let you know that we need your feedback on it. So if you either want to email that back, or you want to come in and meet with Riker or Darren, or you want to come in and say what that is, or you want to write it. We just want to make sure that we have your feedback and council's doing the same thing and so is the mayor, so that we can get that back to Sunrise, so that what we present to the actual public, we've done it in the steering committee, we've done the meetings with them, we've done public hearings, we've done survey. We have done a lot more public, asking for public feedback than what was required. We've done multiple things that were not required, including mailing that survey, doing different things, making the QR code, the scan code. We have gone, the requirements to actually update the general plan are very minimal, very minimal. And we've gone above and beyond in asking for feedback. And even what we're doing right now, asking for the planning commission feedback and asking for council to do that so that we can make sure that what we present to the public on October 1st is actually based on all of your feedback as well, right? Not just the surveys and things. So what we're asking is that you would take the time, we emailed it out to you, that you would take the time, look through that, give us your feedback so that we can get that incorporated in and put the most up-to-date information in front of the public with, and even that, the next, in October, the meeting's on, I don't even know.
The 11th.
The 11th, yeah. And so we'll have it before even the 10-day noticing requirement. So, yeah, that's kind of.
So, yeah, and as I looked through it, it looked like it had a lot of the things that we've been discussing for quite a while now. I also looked at it and it showed the circles and priorities that the people input was, and also lined out, that the city is not looking to be a tourist destination and things like that. But it also talked about economic growth on the last pages. And so
And all sorts of things.
Right. And it even addressed tourism as an economic growth, but it talks about meeting Tokerville's citizens' desire for smaller shops, things like that, boutiques, I guess is what, things like that. So, yeah, well, but we'll get, definitely
What
look
was
at
that
it and
date
get you
again?
some feedback. What's that, buddy?
For the next planning commission.
October
meeting.
11th, when you do this?
Next planning commission meeting, yeah.
So that's his first public.
That'll be the first
That'll
public
be a
hearing.
public hearing on the final draft.
Yeah.
On what we
And then you got to have a public hearing in front of city council.
Yes, exactly.
So we're asked to go through it in the next, what date do you need that by, just so we have a definitive? I know it
Yeah, from when you receive that email, preferably 7 days from that date.
said date of 10,
And
I
I-
think. Do we have a date, just so we can just
Right.
have it done by this date?
Like yesterday.
Let me pull it up.
It came
That's a lot
out,
of pages, that's 58.
there's a lot of
It is.
pages
I
in
read
there.
that thing
It
twice.
actually is not,
Monday, the 11th.
A lot of
Monday,
them are
So
pictures.
next Monday.
next Monday. So
Monday. The 18th is what that would be.
Monday, the 11th is what was
The
that?
18th.
Oh, the 18th.
The 18th.
So you
yeah,
need that,
September
so we'll have
18th.
that, we'll get it to you by, hopefully a couple
Our
days before
comments by
that.
then. Okay.
Okay, so please look through that and figure out what we want to do that with that.
Yeah, so you'll return your feedback, just you can ask me questions. So you'll return your feedback and then we'll get that incorporated into the plan. And then from there, that will be made available to the public on October 1st. And then the actual public hearing in person, like, so you'll be able to download it,
Look
read
at
it,
it.
all of that. But the actual public hearing on that will be a planning commission on the second Wednesday of October.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further need to discuss general plan? We good? Okay. Let's go to business or discussion item F3, discussion on signage for community readiness meetings.
So this discussion item comes, though the group of residents that are putting on the community readiness or emergency readiness meetings have requested to be able to put neighborhood watch signs up in the Tokerville Heights area. They're requesting to put those signs up on next to the roadway on city property.
So it'd basically be in the city right of way.
Correct.
No. Okay.
And
What
there
are,
are-
what are these signs? Are they just the triangle neighborhood watch signs or what are they?
A few of them around town. There's one up there now, I believe.
Oh, okay.
You've got one on Center Street. You've got, do we have an example?
Yeah, if we had a picture of this, we kind of. Oh, so that's all it is. I thought I read emergency, what did it say?
Well, it's a group that's putting on the
Community
community
readiness.
readiness.
Right.
One of the things that they're doing as part of this of being prepared and readiness, they're doing a neighborhood watch
Okay,
program.
so that's what it
They would
is.
like to just put up.
Yes.
Okay, I thought it was like,
Yeah.
hey, we're having a meeting tonight, kind
Yeah.
of signs and that kind of thing,
No,
but
it's actually these, and
Okay.
we've seen some of these around town. When these were put up before, they were just put up. They didn't follow any type of process or anything like that. And because these are, the request is for these on city property, on city signs. So we're just here having a discussion about it. It will go before council. But the point that we're trying to make is that we're going to be getting more and more requests, right, of these things as we grow.
yeah.
For all sorts of things, and because it's not a city program, right, to put those on those signs. So what we're saying is you're probably going to be seeing a sign ordinance come before you where we clarify if these can, if they can't.
Yeah.
So that's why we're also having a discussion right now, but this will actually go.
So our sign ordinance doesn't have anything to do with these types of signs, right? It doesn't talk about.
It doesn't currently address signs by organizations that aren't the city
The city,
on city
right.
property
Right.
or in city right of way.
And so there's got to be some kind of an approval through this, through staff or through the cities.
Some way.
Some type of way to say, hey, yep, you can do this and you can put this many signs out or that kind of thing. So this looks like we need to come up with an ordinance that allows that to happen.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're thinking is maybe amending
Yeah.
the sign
Yeah.
ordinance to address like what happens if private groups would like to put signs in public.
I think that sounds like a great idea. So direction would be Riker. Let's look into that and,
At first glance, you'd be like, oh, yeah, sure, you can put it there. But
Right, but then you start end up-
If it's too close to there, if it lost you,
Distances,
if it
yeah.
starts
Right.
obstructing, if
Or
it's right away, there's-
everybody can put a sign up now and
Right,
things like
it's
that.
just government. Seems like this
And-
would be a simple thing, but it's
Yeah, you've
welcome
got,
to the government.
Yeah.
you do have breakaway posts, things like that that are important, instead of concrete posts.
Specific requirements for those signs.
Those need to go up.
I'm just,
that'd be good.
just curious, it's a quick question. When the city decides to put up a sign, for example, do not park here along Spring Drive, is there any rhyme or reason to where that goes or is it just along the road or what's the?
We usually do use the manual and uniform traffic control devices
Okay.
for spacings and placement of those. We also, in that same guideline that we use, also tells us about the type of post, like I was just talking
Yeah, the
about,
breakaways.
is that type of thing, so
Okay.
in case somebody
So
does.
that sounds like a good resource to incorporate into this. sign.
Yes, we definitely want to always look at that,
Okay.
that manual before we do that. And that's kind of an engineering type of
Yeah.
recommendation.
And we have some other things too, some other requirements with UDOT having this road. For example, we were advertising our spring social, and we had UDOT call us and say, hey, your flashing sign is too close to the white line, right? So,
I like
So-
that.
so
Clear
it's-
zone.
right, and so I guess like what I'm saying, right, is, I mean, we were advertising something very great, and we're like, move the sign.
Right.
And so
Right.
it kind of the same thing is they're asking us for something that obviously is a benefit to the community, but we've got to address where it can go,
Yeah.
right? How close to the white line. So.
You good with that, Riker? You,
I've got
That
notes on
direction.
that, so.
okay, I know you'll come up with something awesome, so thank you. Okay, any more discussion on that topic? No, F3? Wayne, you got, okay.
I like them signs. Put them up.
Hey, yeah, I do too. So, all right, that takes us to business items. G, first business item is discussion and on a conditional use application submitted by Tyler Olson, T-150-A-2-B-1. Current zoning is single family residential R120. Riker. would you
Yes,
give-
so Tyler Olson has submitted this application as Bob Litchfield's agent. The conditional use permit application is for a residential facility for persons with a disability. The application's been reviewed and is complete as per Title 10, Chapter 6 of the Tokerville City Code. That's the submittal section, which outlines what's required for submission for a conditional use permit. In addition to that, in your packets, you'll see there was a site plan included for that application. That site plan identifies some improvements that are not currently on the site. Staff is recommending that if this is recommended for approval, that it include the condition that those improvements and all those requirements go through the JUC process so that they can be addressed correctly.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so when I looked at the aerial photo, it looked like some of it was there. I don't know what wasn't. What part of that was not?
On that site
constructed?
plan, there's a proposed water line and fire hydrant
Okay,
that is not
but the
currently.
structures are there.
Correct, the structures are there.
Okay. All right, and has this gone through fire, any of that for review?
So that would be part of that JUC process as well,
Okay, so we don't
in
know
order
what-
to
what they would
determine all of that.
require. So
Correct.
anything that would be, any recommendation would be based on their outcome as well.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, that would come out in that JUC process.
Yeah. And so just so that you do know that in that we, all utilities have the opportunity to give comments on that. And then, like I say, it would be a deeded easement to the city for the ability to have that fire hydrant down there by the structure so that he can, do the operation that he's asking for.
So occupancy, all of that kind of stuff.
It would be based on what the fire marshal is requiring, fire department.
I see OC 9 on that map. I don't know if the applicant's here. I don't know. Is that occupancy? Is that what that means? Or do we know? That's what, so you're looking at for 18, go ahead,
Yeah, so, yeah, we're looking for 9,
9 per.
9
structure.
structures.
So 18 total is the residents that you're looking at there. And
Yeah.
that is in our code that we call out occupancy and that kind of thing too. So, okay. Floodway, are you familiar with where the floodway is there? And is there any issue with any of the new proposed stuff going in, being in floodway or any of
It's
that?
in the floodplain, that house. isn't it?
So
We would, so with that, we'd consult with our floodplain manager on that. But those structures are existing. There's not an expansion
Right,
on
and
those
that's why I say
structures.
any new structure going is it part of the floodway or, that kind of thing?
Any new structures would need to go through that that process with the floodplain manager.
And just to keep in mind, he's not proposing any new structures. What he's proposed, what is a fire hydrant.
Yeah, and that's why I asked. So, when you said that didn't have all of his structures in or improvements, that's kind of was like, oh, I thought he did. So that's why I'm asking these questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Okay,
the
infrastructure.
fire
That's,
hydrant.
yep. Okay.
So is the existing house exempt from the flood path?
So I'll just say that when I looked at the floodway map, the homes looked like they were out of the floodway. So,
Yeah, and our certified floodplain manager, he is the one that verifies floodplain for the city. And
That's kind of weird because that's only
Yeah.
7.6 feet above finished
yeah,
floor of the
and
river right now.
I did do a quick look at it and it looked to me like they were okay as far as that goes, but that's not up to us. That would be going through JUC review.
Yeah, so staff, we'll very much check that
Okay.
before it goes through. As like we say, bringing the set of construction drawings and having all of you go through that is kind of redundant.
No, we just want to make sure that. when we-
So we definitely will go through that
Recommendations.
process and make sure that that is definitely crossed off. I did look at just quickly looked at the floodplain. A lot of the structures that are down there are not in. There are some, but they're not this house. So basically based on that, now you got the floodway, the flood, and then the flood plain.
Yeah.
Two different things. We have to keep that in mind. So floodway, because something can be in the floodway and still build.
Yeah.
Flood, the other one you can't. Opposite, sorry, opposite. So,
Yeah.
but like I
This is
said.
for disabled, right?
So, yeah, so persons with disabilities, not necessarily,
Disabled.
wheelchair, accessible, but some of them could potentially.
Yeah, and so that was it. Again, I know this is going to be through that, but ADA compliance will all be figured out through any of that kind of stuff as well. So what we're looking at tonight is just to say, hey, does a residential facility for disabled people fit in this area? And we do have standards for review on that. We'll get to that. I'm going to open, if you guys don't have any more questions for staff, I will open up a public hearing.
Yeah, I do have a question because this same piece of property is also under our discussion under 6.
it is under discussion for that. They're different applicants. And the purpose of this one is to bring this into compliance. This is
Okay.
already a use that's being there. We've been trying to go through there and work with the applicants to try to get what they're already doing compliant. They've
Okay.
got state licensing and they've got, you know what I mean? And so the point of this is that we're trying, it would be a permitted use under the other. It would be under, if the zone change that comes later.
It's
was
still,
approved,
okay.
This is still a use.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Gotcha.
So I have one question for staff.
Yeah.
So is Bob Litchfield the owner of this, or is Tyler Olson
Bob
the
Litchfield
app?
is the owner for both of these, and he has different agents. He has different agents. Tyler is an agent on this, and Jake Peard is the agent on the other.
So in the application, it shows that,
We did an affidavit
all right,
to clear it up.
Correct.
It cleared, yeah.
okay. I was just trying to figure out who was actually.
Yeah, so Bob Litchfield is the property owner, and Tyler is the agent, and we've done an affidavit.
Okay,
to
thank you.
clarify that. Yep, good catch.
I had that question. Are you preparing this application for someone else other than yourself? And the answer was no.
Yeah, it was cleared up through an affidavit. He was given permission.
So that's already been taken care of. We're
So
good.
later in
That's
the,
already
yeah, in
been
those,
approved.
I did see that affidavit, but
All right, any other questions?
No.
Okay,
I'm just-
then
I'm just confused with the new format here, Sean. I'm lost with it.
we're at G, and now I'm going to go to the public hearing, which is G1 alpha or A. Are you seeing that? You good?
Yeah, you can go to the
Okay,
public
all
hearing.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, I will now open this up for public hearing. Public input is sought on a conditional use permit submitted by Tyler Olson, T-150-A-2-B-1, current zoning single-family resident, R120. Public hearing is now open. Okay, nobody? Take a motion to close a public hearing on this.
I make a motion, we close the public hearing on business item 1A. We need to
Okay.
see what it is.
Got a motion? Got a second? Take a vote?
Aye.
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 Hey, I feel like, yeah, any motion is definitely going to be based on recommendations of staff. So,
And Chuck, just one thing I did want to just mention too is that when we have this meeting when we had this meeting here at the city, and when we were going through the agenda item, we actually had some of these same questions that you had, and we contacted Todd Godfrey, who was the attorney for the League of Cities and Towns. Our city attorney was out of town, so we contacted him. We are a member city of the League of Cities and Towns, so we're entitled to ask their legal counsel for them. So we're entitled to ask land use questions from the league. And we contacted him and asked him about having two applications at the same time. And they said, yes, that is definitely, the property owner can have multiple applications with multiple agents. And then I talked to Keith Snow, our city attorney, about that yesterday. And I've also talked to Bruce Jenkins about that. So as the appeals authority, so we've cleared that several times of it. There can be multiple applications in at the same
okay.
time.
All right.
So
Okay.
we looked through state
So is
code
it
and
that-
city code and couldn't find an answer to that, so we reached out.
Okay. Thank you.
We're not telling him, yes, he can have it. All we are doing is
Bringing them
Approving
into
this
compliance.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
make a recommendation.
Yeah. Yeah.
we're just approving this application.
Well, we're recommending approval to go to council if that's what we do.
It's just,
Council is the one that would actually approve or deny the application.
yeah.
Planning
I understand
commission would
that.
just make a
Right.
recommendation if you think that city council should approve it or not. It's just a recommendation.
And that's what it's about, is bringing it into compliance, and also making them follow the codes that might otherwise not be being followed now. So,
Yeah, I want everything in here that Jake said yes and no, done. And so if I approve it, then I expect that the permit will not be issued unless all this is completed.
Yeah, and you can
Right.
make that. in
That-
your
that's
motion.
So it should be, that's the way it should be regardless. I'm not gonna make a motion, approve this on this unless I know he signed it, so he's agreed to do all these things before he can get his permit and actively. Is that the way it is?
Yeah, you could vote, yeah, if somebody makes a motion that says they want to recommend this, you can vote no. Or you could make a recommendation to not, and if nobody seconds that, then another motion could be introduced.
Well, I just don't want to step in something. I want to make sure it's right, because it's a different format entirely than we've used the whole time. So I'm a little bit.
A new format.
There's no eyes and-
all of them are a different format. They've changed the format on all these,
yeah.
everything that's on.
And this is part of the format is also part of this new state mandations that are coming to us, that things have to be submitted electronically so that the end users can have an electronic copy of the finalized permit. And so basically that helps you guys to see it as well. You'll be able to see that. Everybody will be able to see that.
So, yeah. So the recommendation would be whether or not you just, this doesn't belong there. That would be one. And the other is we would add in there any things that JUC requires be completed before, so that's how we would make our motion along that. So that would take care of all the thoughts that we just had about, fire. Do they approve that hydrant being there? All of those things, right? So,
And definitely in that recommendation, you would want to just have the city's floodplain manager sign off on that.
and that's so just so you know, and I like the format. I don't have a problem with it, but that's where it brings a lot of questions in our minds when we can't say city manager has signed off. So then we have to come up with this really big motion maybe to say all of these people need to look at it and approve it. So I don't know how to clean that part of it up, but maybe it's staff comments would be
On the approval of JUC.
right. And so JUC is floodplain manager. It's all of those things.
It's one of the people in that.
That makes it a lot easier to do. And I don't have to verify that because we say it.
Just so you guys know, I think there's 13 and now 14. We've got one more that just joined with a franchise agreement. There's about 14 people. That includes the city engineers. That includes any specialty. So if it's along UDOT or any type of that, UDOT has to sign off on those plans as well. We're trying to stay way ahead of the curve here. And then by moving it to electronic, everybody's going to
Any
be able to see
motion
that.
that we make that says, and, follows JUC comments, that would cover that area, right?
Yeah,
All
that
of those
includes the
areas.
water district, the fire
Right.
district, Ash Creek Sewer is in there, TDS. We've got CenturyLink in there. We've got Dominion Energy in there. All of them are
Utah
in that
Power.
room.
Perfect.
So I'm just happy to see them finally becoming compliant.
Yeah, I think
I
it's
mean,
a
this
good
has
idea
been
too.
going on for,
Yeah.
I mean, forever.
I'm ready to take a
but
motion.
I'm ready to make a motion that we recommend approval with the stipulations of JUC giving their stamp of approval on it. So I recommend that we approve
Item
second.
item
G1.
G1.
Okay. Did you say a second, Jenny? I'm
Yep.
sorry. I've got a motion and a second. Take a vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Business item G2, discussion on nightly rental application submitted by Ken Ellsworth, tax ID T-10 or T-10-D. Current zoning is R120, single family residential. Riker?
So this item on the agenda, there was an issue with the public noticing on this. So staff is asking that this item be tabled. And it will come before you again in the next planning commission meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
So we still have to take a motion to table it.
I
based
move
on
that we table it till our next meeting.
I second
Item
it.
2, whoops, G2, sorry.
And I second it.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Take a vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, business item G3, discussion on nightly rental application submitted by Bo Drury, tax ID T-47-A-1. Current zoning is R112, single family residential.
So this nightly rental application has been deemed complete per the requirements outlined in Title 10, Chapter 17, Section 3. Parking on this has been verified on site. There's more than sufficient for this application according to both 10-17.3 of our code and Title 10, Chapter 21, Section 13 of our code, which addresses those dimensions of the parking. Additionally, the applicant has been notified and informed of the requirement for a fire inspection. Staff just recommends that should this be recommended for approval, that requirement for a fire inspection be a condition. Yeah.
All right, just one quick question, and I tried to find it on my computer at home, but trying to figure out the 500 foot, and I know you showed me on the computer. Where do I find that map? Where is that under the permitting process when they go through and answer the questions? Is that where they see that?
So I'm not sure if the public side of the map is currently online yet, but as staff, we have a tool to address that. And so when they call in and or when they make that initial application, that is checked to make sure that it is.
So for the public to be able to look and see where all the nightly rentals are and be able to click on it and say this is
That's
working,
coming
it's
soon.
coming.
That's almost in, that'll be here very quick on our, we're kind of waiting for the new website to come out to push that forward so that we have a place and it's very efficient and
The only confusion for me is like, I don't even know where the other.
It
On
is
our new
there.
rentals
website,
are, so.
our new
Renee
website has
Gardner.
a development map.
But he's like 975
No,
feet away.
it was more about, I'm pretty sure that you've checked this for 500 feet.
Yeah, it meets
But
that
I
requirement.
wanted to be able to see that as a
not a bad
applicant, if that
Tool
was
that
what
we
we
can use.
Yeah,
That is a
and
nice
so
tool.
Yeah, when they
it's all
call-
in work, so that's
Yeah,
good.
well, when they, and when they call in, they actually talk to Sarah, who she does licensing and permitting, and she uses that tool and actually measures it out. So they
Perfect.
can call And do that. And so, anyway, that will be a tool on our new website,
Perfect.
which will also have a development map. So not just nightly rentals and things that from this tool, but it will also have on there what development is happening around. So you'll be able to click on the map of the town and see, oh, this is a development that was approved for this is what they're doing here. This is where the park is going and what we're doing. And so.
Great.
So when we get these, you guys have already checked all of
Yeah.
that. And so that's something that
yeah.
we're going to just
Them right off
assume
the bat.
that is correct.
Through
It goes,
there
there's 3 checks to go through and then there's.
Before it comes to you.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good. Any other questions for?
No.
The applicant, would you like to address this at all? I don't know if there's anything you need to answer.
No, if there's any concerns, I'm
Do
glad
you guys want to ask the applicant anything?
It was more, we designed our house to be able to do that someday. My hope was my kids and daughter would run with it for a little side gig, but it's probably not gonna happen anytime soon, but I wanted to get it in place as the,
Permitting.
you know, there's only like 4 or 5 left, so I'm just getting it in place for later.
Okay. Sounds good. Then I will, no more questions? Open this up for public hearing. Okay, I will open a public hearing for business item G2, discussion on nightly rental, G3, discussion on nightly rental, submitted by Bo Drury, tax ID T-47-A-1, current zoning R112. Public hearing is now open. Anybody have anything to address on that? I do have one letter. This is correct, right? Okay. And I'll read that. It says, "To whom it may concern," this is from Lindsay Olson. She says, "To whom it may concern, we are opposed to the nightly rental development proposed at T-47A1. Tokerville is our motto." Let's see. Tokerville is as our motto states, it's the people. Let's keep it this way. We feel if this were to be built, it would bring about a lot of changes, not for the better. That's Lindsay Olson. Anybody else want to address? Okay.
Where does Lindsay Olson live?
I don't know.
Right here?
Lindsay Olson. Not sure.
I know Lindsay Olson.
She doesn't live far, just a few houses
That's
down.
within 300 feet or something, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, if nobody has anything else to say, I will take a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion, we close the public hearing, item G3.
I'll second it.
Motion and second, take a vote.
Aye.
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 Okay.
Anything from staff?
I feel like it's, it meets all the requirements. We do need to make that recommendation or that comment that it's approved subject to the approval of Hurricane Valley Fire inspection.
And that's scheduled for tomorrow or Monday. I've already submitted.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a recommendation that we approve D3 for a nightly rental.
Staff comments?
Subject to staff comments. Exactly.
Second that?
Okay, got a motion in the second. Take a vote.
Aye.
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 Okay. That moves us to business item 4, discussion on ordinance 2023, amending and restating sections 8-2 through 8-7 of Title 10, Chapter 1 of the Tokerville City Code regarding the noticing requirements of the city.
This one is pretty simple. This actually came through the city recorder and then it went through legal counsel. The state updated the requirements for noticing, for giving out public notices. And when if you want to scroll down just through that, and this is a formality. You don't have a choice in if we public notice this way. These are the state requirements. And so this outlines it, but it does need to come before you and then be recommended to council. And it's just, it discusses how we need public notice right here if you're going to do the general plan. If we're going to do right here public hearings and public meetings, things that we have to consider, that we'll give 10 days notice on these. One of the main things is that we're a Class A city, so we have to follow all the requirements for Class A. So in this ordinance, we've removed anything that did not apply, dropped in the state requirements. Heath Snow drafted this, reviewed it, and this is where we are.
Okay.
And so, land use ordinances still, you can see it discusses in item A and B of that, you've got to do mail-in within 10 days. It tells you where you've got to post and how you've got to do it. If the city intends to hold a public hearing in accordance with that, to adopt a zoning map or map amendment, the city shall send a courtesy notice to each owner of private real estate whose property is located entirely or partially within that map. So it's still the same requirements as affected property owners and things like that. But this just tells you how long you have to do it. They updated how far away those affected property owners can be. They have to state the current zoning, what they intend to zone to. So it's just basically changing what you're going to see on that public notice line. It's actually more than that. So it's more information. Yeah, but Days, if you keep scrolling down through there, I mean, you see, yeah, third party noticing. It's pretty straightforward.
It was pretty much just following state law, so it
That's
seemed
all it
like
is.
it was
It's
just
the
going
state
right
code.
down
You
that.
just have to
Yeah.
adopt the state code. There's no feedback
Okay.
requested or even. it's not
Any-
even-
I move that we recommend that the city council approve this ordinance.
We've got to have
We
a public
can't.
hearing,
Got a
but
public
we'll do that. But thank you.
Oh.
No, you're doing good.
I like the
wanted
white
to
box
do
that
it
too.
Sorry, sorry.
So,
Jump ahead.
okay, so no questions for staff on this. All right.
Wow.
I will now open a public hearing on item 4, discussion on ordinance amending restating sections 8-2 through 8-7 of Title 10, Chapter 1, Tocqueville City Code regarding the noticing requirements of the city. Public hearing is now open. Any comments? Please state your name and address.
Dean Haymore, Sunshine Light. Just a quick question of notification, verification, and qualification. Do you guys go to the county and have them provide you all that mailing list to certify it?
We work with the county, yeah, Daisy gets those.
Okay.
Sure
I
do.
just wanted to make sure because that's a requirement so that you have a certified from the county tax assessor. That
Yeah,
those
we
are,
get the info. from
Okay,
the county.
that's all
Absolutely.
my comment is.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'll take a motion to close this public hearing.
I make a motion, we close public hearing on business item 4 on the amending and restating sections of the Tocqueville City Code.
Okay, got a motion, second, take a vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, sounds like it's pretty cut and dry. I'm ready for a motion if you are.
Go ahead, Jenny.
I move that we recommend that the city council approve the ordinance mentioned in business item G4.
I second it.
Okay, got a motion, second, take a vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, moves us to discussion on G5, discussion on ordinance 2023, planned commercial zone to establish an allowed use table for permitted uses and to clarify the application requirements. Riker.
So in the planning commission meeting held on June 14th, 2023, the planning commission directed staff to draft an ordinance establishing submission requirements for the planned commercial zone. Staff has provided that ordinance for you in your packets with a red line of that. The ordinance has gone through legal review. Some of the changes that are in this ordinance include taking all of the permitted and conditional uses and placing them in an allowed use table, as we've seen in some of our previous ordinances. None of those uses have changed. They're just in that format of the allowed use table. And then in addition to that, there is the establishment of some general requirements and a requirement for the content of written text or site plan. These requirements came from a few of the surrounding municipalities, to name a few: St. George City and Washington City and Hurricane City. This is a compilation of those requirements to fit our situation. And it is before you for review and possible recommendation.
Okay. Any council, or not council, commissioners have any questions for staff?
No, I like it. I like it
Yeah.
much better than what we had.
Yeah, I think it's,
It's more readable.
yeah.
Well,
And it outlined
it-
exactly
yeah.
what's required, so I think it was pretty good.
Specific. Yes,
No questions?
pretty comprehensive.
Okay, then I
Nice.
will
Some of these
open,
are not familiar with me. I thought we kicked them out, but they're back in here.
Oh.
Where do we end up on that?
I'm sorry, which
Some
part
of
of
the
it?
selections of what was allowed or even allowed.
I think that was on MU.
MU 20 is where we kicked
MU20,
them out. So
yeah.
tonight, we're looking at this ordinance as, and if we draft or we recommend it, it could be with or without these things on that table if we chose to scratch some out or whatever. So if you have no more questions for staff, I'm gonna, go ahead.
I actually do have, I know you're going to help with the public
Go
hearing,
ahead.
but just as a staff comment, one thing that I do not see on here that I would wonder, just because we have tattoo parlor on there and things, and I know that some of these are permitted uses, some of these are conditional uses, and some of them, one of the things that I've been seeing in a lot of meetings that I've been going to with other just cities and city managers, one thing that I don't see on a lot of our issues is vape shops. And I would like to.
Oh,
Just-
vape shops.
for vape,
Mm,
yeah.
yeah.
vapes. I know we have tattoo parlors on here as a conditional use and things like that. I'm obviously not a big fan of vape
Yeah.
shops, just saying that publicly. Not discriminating, not anything. But we have learned some things from, West Valley City said, hey, there are some things that if we were to do it over again, there are some things that we would have population limits on, like maybe one vape shop after you get to 10,000 residents or per 10,000 residents. And those are some things that we can do. I'm not necessarily saying that has to be in this ordinance as a not permitted
Just some ideas.
or things like that. But I'm just saying, as we're drafting a lot of these allowed uses and conditional uses, I do think we need to consider that, right? If we're going to try to regulate as a conditional use. a
So,
tattoo parlor, I think that a vape
just
shop
to-
should be evaluated.
And just as a thought on that, and there's probably a lot more things that we would never be able to list. And it does have that as other uses similar to the above. So
Right.
that's still a condition. So if we miss any of those things, that doesn't necessarily mean that they couldn't do that
Right.
based on a review. So
Yeah, I'm just thinking that as I've
Yeah.
attended a lot of these other meetings, when they're talking about different things of public safety, I've attended a lot of public safety meetings and things like that. And I just know that is one of the uses that has been discussed a lot about if you allow them or if you don't.
yeah, and based on a population thing,
Yeah,
kind of
I'm
is a
just saying
different
something to
idea.
Consider as we're doing these,
Okay.
right?
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
I can't have to imagine, I can't, you want to go in public hearing first?
I can do that. Yeah. Okay, I will open up public hearing on item G5. Public hearing, public input is sought on ordinance 2023 planned commercial zone to establish an allowed use table for permitted uses and to clarify the application requirements. Now open up the public hearing.
Excuse me, again, Dean Haymore, Sunshine Lane. I just want to clarify, like you said, vape and tattoos. On current ordinances and things like that, for protection of our children and everything else, there's a distance requirement from schools, from churches, from public buildings and things like that. And we just want to make sure you have those in there for the protection of our youth and our citizens in this great county.
Thank you.
Great comment. Thank you.
Yes.
Chris Butterworth on Rimview, Tokerville. I was thinking the same thing. Are all of those permitted by all, everybody's been approved? Because I also with the vaping and the tattoos and that, I'm not sure.
Those
I
are
would
all-
like that
those are all
personally
under
in our
conditional,
area.
so
Huh?
They would be conditional on a lot
Conditional.
of those.
So people have to be approved to do that or,
Yeah, based on a condition.
and then we would have another time later to approve or disapprove. Okay. Pardon? Thank you.
And we'll answer those when we get in discussion. Anybody else? Okay. Take a motion to close public hearing.
I make a motion, we close the public hearing on G5.
Second, you got it.
We've got a motion and a second. Take a vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay, I think that was a great comment. I do think that, we do have, it's a condition with the S on it, right? And that's specific, I don't know if that means specific code or what that means. What does that mean, actually?
It's at the bottom right there, conditions that was standard.
Okay, and so the standards could be distances away and things like that.
Right, but you'll notice that that's CS, that's actually by the one that has the, if you go up, Jason, scroll just a little bit, right there,
Yeah.
that's under the residential.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you go to the 1017.2 and it tells you, so if we were to have taverns and if it's conditional, do we need to have another spot you go to that says it has to be 500 feet away, or do we just say, I mean, how do we do that in the use table, I guess is my
You
question.
just put that in your ordinance under the.
Physical restrictions under there.
Okay, yeah,
That type of thing. So we got physical restrictions, but we would also could add something for the conditional use restrictions,
yeah. that's kinda-
such as, and then talked about that right there. Yeah. So you got your physical restrictions, but those are mostly geared towards buildings and setbacks and things. But we could add another portion in there to actually,
So we could
um,
label it with another something that refers to a physical.
Additional- yeah, and we could make them specific to those conditions.
Well, so liquor store, tattoo parlor,
Right.
vaping,
We
which
certainly
isn't
don't
even
want that
on there.
next
We
to a
could,
school.
we could just put CS, instead of C, conditional.
Well,
One thing I think that would be also relevant here is just look at other cities and see how they, if they're controlling it through the ordinance or through a different type of ordinance, through maybe a criminal ordinance, or I'm sorry, not criminal, but the regular ordinance. I don't know.
You need it there up front. I've dealt with this constantly. So they'll come in, especially parks too.
Yeah.
If
So
you
I
put it there
think-
straight out, you come up with a decision and it's straight out.
I think it would be good if we did that. I think if we, on these uses that are conditional or any use that has a, possible impact on the surrounding schools, things like that, that we need to protect, that we add into that, somewhere it would say C, whatever, another letter. CS is referring to another ordinance that talks about disabled people, residents, where we may not need to create another ordinance, but we talk about restrictions within the physical restriction part of this ordinance. So anyways, so Reichert, that would be one of the recommendations that I would like to make on that.
Yes.
It would be to add that into the restrictions, and we need to kind of go through and just tell them which ones we think that would be something we want to. So you guys come up with whatever you want there.
Chairman, and in
Yes.
addition to that, state code also calls out a lot of things that are permitted or not permitted near schools.
Right.
But we can pull state code too
Yeah.
and see what those distances are.
Yeah, and I actually remember I saw it in St. George's code. I believe I saw taverns had to be 500 feet or 1,000 feet away from school or something like that. So I know it's out there. We can add it into here pretty easily. So take a look at that use table. What would you on that determine that we needed to have him, or maybe you can determine and then just present it to us at the next meeting.
Well, the ones I see, liquor store, tattoo parlor, tavern. I mean,
And
those
add
are the
vape.
ones that add vape and put
Yeah.
it on there.
I'm not afraid to say I don't want them.
Well,
I don't want that. I don't want that stuff in town.
Well, and that's,
Do I have to have that stuff in town?
well, I like that
You know,
too.
I mean,
But-
when I stand up, and if I don't want it, I don't want it. I don't,
you mean not even have it on here as a
A
conditional?
tavern, no taverns
Yeah, I
up
mean-
in town.
we have youth, a lot of
Yeah.
youth, and we're gonna have a lot more youth. And I don't want to contribute to that type of behavior or culture
I
for
guess
the
what
youth
I
of this
was-
town.
Yeah, and I guess what I was saying by the vape shops is if you look at the conditional uses, you have tattoo parlor and you have a tavern on there as a conditional use. So as far as a vape shop, that could very easily be argued that that is a use that is similar to that.
Mhm.
Yes.
In harmony and character
Yes.
with that. So I'm just wondering if you want to call those out, if you want to remove things from this, if you, I'm just wondering, yeah, we just need some either direction or recommendations
Yeah.
and then pass.
So
on.
if we're gonna have them in there, then we want a special restriction on them. And if they're not, then we don't care anyway. So if you'll write it up with the restrictions on there, and then in our next meeting, we can come together and recommend however.
Or you can
we'd
put
like
not
to.
allowed.
Right, we could say that too, yeah.
I mean, I just.
Yeah, you
So-
could call out.
Not
That's-
allowed.
That's just me
Not allowed.
speaking.
Yes, I
I
would
don't,
just do not have them allowed, period.
I thought we kicked them off of there because.
Well, we do have them in our developer agreements. So I know that that was in there as uses for firelights. And so
Yes,
some of
you're
those, so I
right.
know that they have been
It didn't come
allowed
through
to
this
agreement.
planning commission.
No, that didn't. I agree with that. So, but this is just, we're going to make recommendations to him tonight. We're going to table this until we get that back, right? So
But we have to
Um,
give him direction.
that's what we're doing right now. So one other thing that I saw in here, Riker, that caught my eye is it's talking about the rear setback. And it also talks about big box stores and these kind of things. And the rear setback in this ordinance says 10 feet. I don't think that's adequate for fire protection and things like that. So we're past that part. I'm sorry.
Oh, you closed?
Well, yeah, we closed the public hearing.
Gotta stick
Sorry
with it.
about that, man. But so to me, I did look up St. George. St. George says that if it's over 10 feet high, then you have to go 20 feet rear setback. That makes sense to me. I know as a fireman and trying to deal with all those really tight areas with a fire truck, it's ridiculous. So, and we're in a great position now to call out bigger rear setbacks around those higher fire load possibilities. So I would say I like 20 feet would be a minimum, or the
No.
rear setback makes sense to me.
No.
Any other recommendations or thoughts?
We still need to tell him whether we want them to even be included on there.
Well, he can come up with it both ways. Well, actually, all he'd have to do is make a note in the restrictions on those. And you said tattoo parlor, tavern, vape shops, liquor stores.
Mhm.
It says liquor store,
Mhm,
things like that.
mhm.
And then we can say restriction, but in the next meeting, if that's something we want to strike, we can do that, or however we'd like to do that.
Okay.
I guess we could just decide to strike it now too, if that's what you guys want to do.
It scares me because of the last thing. I mean, other uses similar. I mean, that could be non-ending, undesirable or desirable stuff you want.
Riker?
So just to clarify, with this type of zone, the way that this ordinance is set up, applicants for a zone change to this zone have to come in with the uses that they intend to have prior to receiving the zone change. That's part of their application. So they have to identify each of the uses that they intend to have in that zone, and then that zone change does not become effective until they've received approval for a final plat or final site. And so they'd be bound to that,
Yeah.
those uses
Right.
identified.
Yeah.
They couldn't come in, apply for the zone, and then use the whole blanket.
Well, and Heath had made a comment that if it's not on our use table, we can say that is not a use that we would allow in this area. Similar, I guess you could kind of get into a fight over that, so. Yeah,
I'm in favor of that, but
yeah.
that's just my perspective of it.
So,
You don't have the problem of dealing with the
All the
variable.
problems.
You know, can I really fit it in? Can I put it in over here? Because try to get it in there. If we don't want it, we don't want it.
Well, since it's allowed in plan develops, I'm having a hard time understanding how we can prohibit it throughout the rest of the town. I mean,
Historic part of it, I guess. Probably wouldn't have it over here anyway, but you never.
probably not,
Bring that up.
but I mean, we're already allowing it in in plan developments. So, but
That's-
you know,
that's
and I
true.
guess I try hard to not try to impose
trying to be
my own
fair.
beliefs
Standards.
on other people who may want to go to a tavern or get a tattoo. I mean, I don't know that I really care if somebody does go do that. It's none of my business. But I don't know. But then again, I'm not real big on having vape shops either. So,
Riker, do you feel like you have enough there to present to us next time, or do you want to clarify something?
You could clarify the direction on those as to whether you're wanting a draft with specific distance requirements or specific requirements for those conditional uses, or whether you're wanting those
To strike them.
to be struck,
completely.
yeah.
And one thing we have to remember as we draft these ordinances, that if there is a use that you feel like should be prohibited or should not be allowed in there, one thing that when we license businesses or things and we attend those business license trainings, one thing we have to be really careful about is discrimination, right? And so when you're saying that you don't want something like, say, for example, it's a sexually oriented business, that's a big hot topic when we go to these, and if they'll be allowed in towns or if they'll not. And obviously those things are illegal, but as we look at those types of businesses, the suggestion is, because you can't discriminate, right, against people, their businesses or their types of businesses or things like that. But what you can do is cite secondary effects, whether these types of businesses have statistically, right, elevated crime rates associated with them or things of that nature. And so the reasons for denial typically run for things that have negative secondary effects. Like you don't want that next to your kids walking home from school, right? It's statistically, there's lots of research and data that shows that it's not going to have that next to where children are walking. So you cite the secondary negative effects of why you're denying this or why you don't want that business in your town, rather than just saying, I don't like it. Like, I don't like it doesn't work. I don't like it is discriminatory. So you've got to cite why you don't like it, and it should be based on some sort of negative secondary effect, that crime is higher in these ways or things like that. Just like what you said about the setbacks being going from 10 feet to 20 feet, that makes sense, and that's based on the fact of fire trucks getting through there, right? Secondary effects, public safety. And so the same thing has to, what you consider permitted or non-permitted or even conditional uses. One thing that we need to go heavy on is secondary effects of the why. Not just an evaluation of, I don't like this business, I don't feel like this is good. We need to base this on some sort of secondary effect that we can actually demonstrate through documentation, facts, figures, something, other than just everybody in the room saying, yeah, we feel like this is bad for kids, we get that. But we have to actually cite why we feel like this is negative, and it's usually a secondary effect. That would be one thing. The other thing I would like to just keep in mind at this point, this doesn't, I mean, it's kind of along these permitted uses and things when we talk about that. They're hitting very heavily on First Amendment rights and free speech rights and things like that in different municipalities. One thing that's becoming very popular is for people to challenge things based on either discrimination, obviously, or violation of their freedom of speech. And so with these, they're actually assigning people to review things being said by cities, planning commissions, city councils, and things like that to see if the language is discriminatory or derogatory or targeted or things like that. And then they assign a reviewer, a monitor that monitors your city and all communications for a very long time at the cost of the city if you don't fight it. So we do need to be careful as we do these ordinances, not necessarily careful, but I think just conscientious of when we say that we don't want these things in our town or we don't like these things, of why. Not just an opinion or a feeling. That would be one thing I would say moving forward that if we could.
Okay.
Well, I don't like it because of the detrimental health, safety, and welfare of our children.
Yeah.
There you go.
Kids in town. and
Secondary
That's
offense.
primarily
And
what
I'm sure
Tokerville
Riker
is
can dig up
family
statistics on
oriented.
that.
So.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
on that
And
sort
that's
of
what I'm
thing.
saying. So what I'm saying is some of your direction when you say take off this. If you say
Because of
take off
this,
the tavern or
yeah.
parlor, let's have the
Reasoning
direction
why.
include maybe some backup research and documentation of why.
Okay. All right.
Got some work to do.
We think that's dirty or we don't like it.
Yeah. And so I think that would give us, if that's the route we want to go, opportunity to write those reasons why in the next meeting. And yeah, so
Do you want to table it?
I would say that we give him direction on how to correct this tonight, table it and let him do that and come back in. And hopefully if those are things that you would like to remove, that we have a reason why to do that.
So you're going to write this up either way, correct? you're going to make options of removing those or putting distances, correct?
I can do both if that. If
Is
I would
that what
prefer
we want him
that
to do?
Both
because I
options.
just don't, I would never vote for removing just because I don't.
Well, and that's, yeah.
Go
so-
to a tavern.
So, right,
mean, there's
that'll
enough
be
people
fairly
in the
easy to
town
write
that-
those two different, so,
So
I can do that.
okay. Oh, sorry. Just slap me if I don't
It's
notice
okay,
you.
It's okay. So what I think I'm hearing Afton say is, if you go through and say, we're not going to allow those, period, then that could be a reason for someone to come back on us, right?
Yeah.
Well, we
That-
need to have reasons for why we're denying it other than what we feel or
Right.
what we like.
But would you deny that? I mean, would you just leave it as conditional? And then if somebody came in with an application, then you
Then
say
get the
no
evidence.
because of this reason and this reason?
Well, no, a conditional use is a permitted use with conditions.
So
Gotcha.
anything you see up there that says conditional, as
Mhm.
long as they meet the conditions, that
Then-
turns into a permitted.
Okay,
use.
gotcha.
But if we
Okay.
decide to take it off in this meeting and the next meeting, it would be good to say why we just choose not to
Right,
have it on.
right.
Right,
Jenny?
the reason for exclusion.
I'm just thinking of Springdale's attempts to keep out Subway.
Yeah.
I don't really want us to get into lawsuits like that if we can avoid it,
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
just along the lines of what you were just saying.
Yeah, denying
Yeah.
franchises, they were just
Yeah.
exactly that. They were like, we don't want franchises. I was like, okay, we got other sandwich shops.
Yeah,
So that was.
I don't mind hotels. Okay. Riker, you good with that?
Yep, I've got
Okay,
notes
any
on that.
further discussion needed on that or direction for Riker? Okay,
Nope.
then I needed to have a motion to table this and give Riker the opportunity to do that.
I so move.
I've got a
Second.
motion. I got a second. Take a vote.
Aye.
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 All right. Okay, that takes me to business item G6. Discussion on zone change application submitted by Bob Litchfield, tax ID numbers T-168-E, T-168-B-2-D, T-149-A-4-A, T-149A-5, T-149-A-3, T-149A-2-A, T-150-A-2-B-1, and T-168-J. And the zone change they're requesting is to go from R120 to planned commercial. Riker?
So in this application came before you and was tabled in the planning commission meeting held on July 12th of 2023. The applicant has since submitted additional documents for the application and is seeking a recommendation from planning commission. These additional documents, however, do not meet the motion that was made in the previous planning commission meeting, that motion included requesting documents that met requirements similar to the requirements from the city of St. George and surrounding cities. The applicant was provided with those documents, but is choosing to present before you today. And it's before you for your review and possible recommendation.
Okay, any questions for staff? Jake, would you care to make any comments to us?
I think you guys have heard everything you need to hear from me, probably. Those are
Okay.
questions.
Yeah, and that's if you wanted to say anything that we don't know yet, but okay. All right. Do you have any questions? I might have already asked you that. Any questions for staff at all on this?
So I have each parcel, do they meet the record? Does each parcel meet the required size?
No.
No.
Then why are we even looking at those? I mean, it makes no sense to me. I mean,
You want a conditional use permit on that condition. then we
Yeah, I
can
wouldn't-
convert
okay.
those parcels.
okay, thank you.
Um,
Do you have anything?
I do have something. Daisy, I just want to clarify that this is public notice for public hearing on item 6.
That didn't make it.
Oh, let's see.
I think it was posted.
If it's public notice, I just need to see if it was public noticed.
Yeah. I
I'm
have
just
that.
looking at the agenda and I'm just not seeing a public notice item on here, but I think it was public noticed on there and the public notice on the website. So Commissioner, what we need you to do is ask for a motion to amend the agenda.
Yeah.
to-
I can include the public hearing. Okay.
Yeah, because it's public notice, but if you're going to amend the agenda for either missing or that.
Yeah, and it was it?
It was public
It
notice.
was public
It
notice.
just didn't make it on the agenda. It looks like. I'm just looking at the glance through.
So
It is
we're
on the public
good?
notice website.
Okay. All right, then I would take a motion to amend the agenda to include a public hearing for this item.
I make a motion that we amend our agenda to include the public hearing for item G6 for a discussion on a zone change application.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Take a vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, agenda is amended. And my computer shut off, so I can't do that either.
Oh, you're shut down?
Well, it's locked and I wasn't looking at it enough to see. All right.
Wayne's did that too. Daisy had to come do it.
So I will now open item G6, discussion or an application for zone change submitted by Bob Litchfield. Tax ID numbers on all those that I stated before. Public hearing is now open.
My name's Dean Haymore. I live on 2180 South Sunshine Lane. Thank you for giving us time to speak. First off, let me just remind you that you just made an agenda change on a public notice that was required by law. Now, the other thing is your agenda public notice has to be posted 24 hours before this meeting. Now, it doesn't comply with that law. So you're in conflict of your own law by amending it to put it on tonight because it wasn't agendized and sent out 24 hours before your meeting. So first comment. Second comment, we've been through this, our master plan or your plan and everything basically does not allow this in this area. We've been through this. Commissioner Eaton made a point and staff even made a point that the applicant didn't meet the requirements that you asked him to meet at the last meeting. That's a moot point right there. No discussion. Either applicant comply with what you guys asked for and staff asked for, or don't resubmit it. You can't even hear it because he hasn't complied with the requirements. Now he has came and put some public notices, public meetings for the public out and to show what they want to do. But they can't even get to the point to give you guys the information legally in the documents that you need sitting in front of you to be able to make a decision to even hear this. So there's there's 3 strikes right there and the man's out. I'm just saying, this is government at our best, and that's why you're here. You are representatives of each one of are residents here in the city of Torkerville. You have the responsibility to go through the procedures. We've already been denied twice what he's asked for. Now we're going for a third time with a comp launch open. They say we can do everything now. Let's go with commercial zoning. And then let's impact. There's no information on the impact of traffic, 800 RV parks. Your RV ordinance only says you can put 350 RV parks in. So there's things that's not even close that he shouldn't even be able to submit it because he's not even compliant with your current ordinance on commercial. Then you also have and asked, what's the impact on air, noise, emissions, flood, hillside ordinances, all the different ordinances you put in place to safeguard our community. And he hasn't
Thank-
complied with any of those.
Thank you with that. I appreciate your
Can I come under
comments.
Daryl after the meeting?
Legally.
Oh, let's finish the, I'll let her address this real quick.
Yeah, I
guys.
actually, the reason that we were talking about amending that on the agenda, we were trying to see, the city attorney was under the impression that the public hearing was left open from the last meeting. And so we're verifying that, but I think you verified that it's closed from the last planning commission meeting. I was not here for that meeting. So I'm just wondering.
And one other question, was it on the agenda? Did it show as a
It's-
public hearing?
It cannot be added. But if it was
No,
opened,
I'm
then
saying,
it
was
could
it
still.
public noticed on the agenda as a public hearing? Yes, no.
No. And so what she's verifying is if whether or not the public hearing was open from the last one, but I believe that it was closed from the last one. And in that
Did you
case,
close
it does need to be tabled. She's just going to verify whether or not it was still open from the last meeting, but I think it needs to be tabled, quite honestly. Table it. Because I don't think it meets the noticing requirements. So it was closed for last. Yeah.
Okay.
Close the public hearing and table the item.
All right, well, with that all being said, that's where we're at. We cannot
The motion, we
continue
close
with
the
this.
public hearing on G6.
I'll second it.
I
Aye.
Aye.
We can still discuss.
Well, we actually, I don't even know that we can discuss it. I think we're tabling it is where we're at right now. It's no discussion, it's just a table.
Well, the discussion part was noticed.
If you get a table, so you
What's
want to
the
close
item? It's just like how it's like how our public noticing requirement for that nightly rental, that item was tabled and moved on without discussion, because the public noticing requirement is not met.
Yeah.
I'm reading it right here. It's not
Okay,
that.
so that sounds like what we gotta do tonight.
Okay. To,
Table this item, or
oh,
whatever you
didn't,
want to
he already
do.
made a motion in a second. Did you make a motion?
No, I don't think we
Table
had a
it?
motion.
I make a motion, we table item G6.
Got a motion and a second. Take a vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, any further need to discuss any of this stuff tonight? Okay, I will adjourn this planning commission meeting. Time is
7:56.
set 7:56 PM.